Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Nerds Explain It All. I'm Lance.
And I'm Zach.
And hey, we got a special guest, another friend of the show who's is a veteran of the show. Mike Krause is here.
Hello. Thank you for having me, boys.
What's up, Mike?
Oh, can't wait to talk about this documentary.
What documentary is that?
Oh, the death of Superman Lives, of course.
Yes, what happened?
Indeed, what happened? We shall talk about it.
Yes, that's the name of the documentary. That's a little, let me call a little back and forth, a little camaraderie there. Start the show.
We're just explaining it all, man.
So there's a new documentary that actually has not been officially released yet. It's called The Death of Superman Lives. What happened? I guess are we children of the 80s or the 90s?
Both.
I guess we're in that middle ground because, like, you say 80s, but then, like, most of the 80s you're too young to remember anyway, so it doesn't really count. So,
none of us were alive for the Star Wars trilogy.
What are you talking about? I saw them all three in the theater in 1997. It's so weird. They came out a month apart. It's weird.
Yeah, man. Ridiculous.
And they cranked that out. So we're all children of the 90s, basically. We all remember, and we're all, nerds. Hence the fact we're having this conversation on this podcast. There was all this talk of a Tim Burton Superman movie in the 90s. It was when he called Superman Lives, or The Death and Life of Superman, or it was all these rumors about it, because back in the 90s, the big Superman story is, as we all know, is the death of Superman. And it's when he fought Doomsday and he died and he came back to life. And it was a big event at the time, and it was a big deal all over the place. Yeah, then it was. Now that stuff happens like twice a year with every character.
I remember it was so big that my fourth grade elementary school teacher took a whole day of class to talk about that comic book.
And then he was fired the next day.
Well, no, like, because I remember, the president talked about it briefly in something. Like, everybody talked about it.
It was mainstream. Yeah, it was mainstream. It
was a huge deal.
Because they didn't do these things like they do now. Because we've had Batman R.I.P., Death of Captain America, Wolverine's going to die soon, or he has already. The characters come and go at, like, I don't know. Just like reboots.
Twice.
Yeah, but the thing is...
God.
Yeah, but the thing is, what happened with this, though, that what made it so different was that it was Superman. Like, other characters have died before, but not Superman. And so, like, when Superman, people paid attention to Superman. People didn't really, it was somewhat of an uproar when Robin died in the 80s because, fans killed him.
But he wasn't even the original Robin.
Exactly, so that's why people didn't give a shit. Like, Flash died in Crisis on Infinite Earths, but they were like, we got Wally West. So, but when Superman died, that was a big deal because it's Superman.
He's not a legacy character. There's no other Superman waiting to come take them at all. Even with Batman, you have Dick Grayson. You have Nightfall was the Batman equivalent to Death of Superman. I would love to see Azrael again, like in the new 52.
Oh, definitely.
I'll take him over Jim Gordon in a Chappie costume.
Oh God, don't get me started on that bullshit.
That's a conversation for another day.
Man,
can't cancel all your subscriptions, please. Because that's what's going on in the world of Batman. So in the 90s, there had not been a Superman movie since 1987, which is Superman 4: The Quest for Peace.
Oh God.
Which so do you like Superman 3 or Superman 4 better, Krause? What do you think?
I like 3.
Mm-hmm.
4 was cool because you finally had him battling against, not finally, he did it in Superman 2, but you had him against another superhero rather than a computer or a robot.
He was barely against the computer in Superman 3, but I agree. Superman 3 is of the two. I'll take Superman 3 because it's fun to watch.
It has Superman fighting Superman. How can you beat that?
That is pretty cool. Where he splits into two and he fights in the junkyard, and Christopher Reeve was awesome in that movie.
It's also the most entertaining of the two.
Entertaining of the two, entertaining of the four.
Yeah.
Richard Pryor.
That's right.
Both keys at the same time.
But Superman 3 and Superman 4 definitely took the franchise away from those Donner roots.
Into the ground.
Yeah, into the ground. To the cornfields of Smallville.
Yeah. In Superman 4, Superman 3, you can at least watch it, and it looks well put together. Superman 4 is just embarrassing to watch for everyone involved.
Yeah.
Christopher Reeve gave it his all, as he always did, but beyond that, it was pretty... Gene Hackman came back for that. Are you kidding? Academy Award winner Gene Hackman in that movie.
I would love to be a fly on the wall in that conversation of convincing him to get on board that script.
I think it's a Michael Caine Jaws 4 situation.
Real.
He's like, I've never seen Jaws 4, but I have seen the house it built. It's Michael Caine's quote about being in Jaws 4. But so that Superman was, death of Superman, right? Superman was dead as far as the movies went, and he was in development hell forever because people didn't know what to do with him. Tim Burton had a lot of success with Batman in 1989, and so he was a logical choice for the studio to go, hey, you did a great job with Batman. Why don't you do Superman? And Hollywood still thinks that. And they're wrong still because they're two very different characters. I know you don't like Man of Steel, Krause. I do, but I would argue that Nolan is probably the weaker element in it. Like, if they had just let Snyder be Snyder, like it probably would have been a lot better.
No doubt.
Yeah, I mean, look at Watchmen.
I would agree with that.
I mean, look at Sucker Punch now. So, for our entire youth, we heard all these rumors about, there's going to be a Superman movie with Tim Burton, and it's going to be Nicolas Cage. You're like, what?
Oh, yeah.
Nicolas Cage, the guy from Con Air?
And that was before the internet, so I remember, like, reading, monthly cinema magazines that, Tim Burton was attached, and he was going to get Nick Cage to be Superman. I remember being really excited about it.
Yeah, because it was a Superman movie. Oh, cool. I've been watching these ones on tape my whole life.
Well, see, like when I was hearing about that, like I was just excited because like Tim Burton was going to be like attached to it. Because again, at the time, like we had only known Tim Burton's Batman, and then I guess we got Forever later. But like you had that attachment to the Burton Batmans, and you were just like, well, those were good, so his Superman should be good as well.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like you said, Krause, it's funny that it's before the internet. So I remember reading Starlog or these other Hollywood publications of entertainment news. It was always like Superman Lives and Terminator 3 and Alien versus Predator. All these movies,
man,
which we eventually got, which are all terrible. So John Shepp is the guy that put this together, and we actually went to Alamo Drafthouse is having a special screenings like across the country before of the documentary before it actually comes out in July. It's available in July to purchase, and regardless of what we say here, I will definitely be buying it on Blu-ray. I think
definitely.
It's just the nostalgic factor alone. Plus, there's going to be a lot of special features, things that they filmed but didn't have time to put in the documentary. So, just as a disclaimer, I know I always sound negative about stuff, but I will be buying this when it comes available. So we had the opportunity to go check it out early last week. So we saw it at Alamo Drafthouse, and actually John Shepp was there, and he had a short Q&A. I was diplomatic and didn't ask any questions.
Despite my insistence that you do.
Yeah.
The guy put himself out there. He put together. He's not a documentarian, okay, by any means.
No.
He's just a big Superman fan. So, I mean, he took it upon himself
with
the budget, right? I mean, it was Kickstarter funded. I mean, it was pretty much crowd funded.
Yeah. Big shout to Kickstarter because like we get really cool things because of that thing. So,
yeah, that's true.
Well done.
Cut out the middleman. Give the people what they want.
That is true.
So he basically took it upon himself to research why. Well, first of all, what Superman Lives was going to be, and then why it failed, why it didn't happen.
Why it died.
Yeah, what happened. They got to interview almost everyone involved in the project, which is very impressive. I mean, they interviewed Tim Burton, Kevin Smith, and then John Peters, the producer, who is by far the star of this documentary.
Stole the show.
Amazing. Like, the man just lives in his own world. Now, we've all heard, I assume, all you nerds out there have heard Kevin Smith talk about his experiences on Superman Lives. And he's recounted stories about John Peters before. And you think, okay, it's funny. I'm sure the guy's weird, but I'm sure Kevin Smith is embellishing it a bit, Not at all.
I've learned to understand that Kevin Smith is not really embellishing when he tells his stories. He's telling the earnest truth. Like,
you know what? Let's talk about John Peters for a minute. He makes the whole documentary.
He's a character.
Without this guy, this documentary would have fallen flat, I think. Like, he really just injects so much just life into this thing.
And it's surprising because John Sheff said, I believe, that he got the interviews a month or two before we saw the screening. Am I correct?
Yeah, he was the last interview they did, and they didn't think they were going to get him. And I'm like, are you kidding?
It's incredible.
What would this have been without John Peters?
Garbage is what it would have been.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go that far, but
garbage. No, I'd go that far.
I'd go that far.
Well, it's true. It would have been very one-sided. because all the crew people talk about. Show. Oh yeah, well, I mean, John Peters, he just talks. He talks so much shit. Like he's like, I'm a fighter. I've been in 500 fights. I grew up on the streets, and he's completely serious when he's telling John Sheff this. And you're like, that had the greatest crowd reaction. Anytime John Peters would talk, people just laugh.
Yeah,
and he was talking about Superman's cape. And he's like, I wanted his cape to be detachable. You know, he could take it and throw it and cut someone's head off, and then it would come back to him. And I'm like, are you what?
Like how that guy didn't like just fall into laughter like while listening to this guy is beyond me.
And then he like takes a phone call in the middle of their interview, and John Sheff sits there drinking his bottle of water. Man, and he was so fixated on having a giant spider because it was, quote, the most fearsome member of the animal kingdom.
But I thought polar bears were, though.
Yeah, and he mentions polar bears, too. And the back and forth with the Kevin Smith interview and the John Peters interview, he's like, why do you have Brainiac killing animals in your movie? It's like, hey, that's what John wanted. He wanted them to fight polar bears. They wanted polar bears guarding the Fortress of Solitude.
Yeah.
Which is just...
Well, it's interesting. John Peters, if I'm not mistaken, he was sued after the Superman Returns production for sexual harassment and I believe hostile work environment or something.
Well, I can believe that. I believe that.
You can look it up online, but I'm almost certain he was sued.
So don't take our word for it.
Yeah.
Thank you, LeVar. Yeah, I do remember that now that you mention it, and seeing the guy now, I'm like, yep, I believe it. So John Peters, he produced the Batman movies, so that was his in as far as superhero movies go, and he was the one that got this whole thing in motion. You know, he got Kevin Smith to write a script, and Kevin Smith is probably the other big part of this documentary, I'd say. Like the backbone of it. And then there are lots of other people who were interviewed, like costume designers, artists, various crew people who were hard at work on this movie for about 2 years of pre-production until they eventually pulled the plug. The one notable exception is Nicolas Cage is not part of this documentary. And
sadly.
Well, he is just... He's not, like, interviewed, but, like, we got really good stuff of him.
Well, he is featured in archive footage, which is...
That's almost just as good.
That was cool.
And they make the point after they screened the movie, they did the Q&A with John Shepp, and they make the point that said, hey, look, we got better than Nick Cage. We got Nick Cage in the Superman costume talking to Tim Burton about their thoughts on the character. Completely misunderstand the character, but
yeah.
Interesting to see them talk about it nonetheless. And the further they get along in the costume process, the better it looks. And to be honest, the last batch of pictures, I think they took a bunch of promo pictures, like literally the week that they decided to cancel the movie. Yeah. Nick Cage looks pretty good as Superman. Like, he does. I must say. And I'm sure he would have made a good Clark Kent.
The little we saw of his Clark Kent looked intriguing.
Yeah, it was different.
Mm-hmm. It's nothing we'd seen before or since.
It was different in a good way. It was different, like in the sense that, like, yeah, this is like as you said, like this is nothing we've seen before, but it wasn't stupid.
It was a Clark Kent of the 90s.
Yeah. Watching Friends.
Hanging out at Central Perk.
Speaking of Friends, Courtney Cox is one of their top picks for Lois Lane.
Oh, really? That's right.
Who I thought would have been a good Lois Lane. Mm-hmm. But, speaking of the documentary as a whole, I will say that it was very insightful as far as like the things they showed you, all this production art and all these props and all these story ideas and all these casting suggestions. But I will say they didn't really explain to you what the movie was going to be.
No, they didn't. It's hard to say. It's hard to tell, like if they actually even knew.
That's a valid point because there are 3 writers and multiple drafts.
Yeah,
I feel like he teased the director John Shepp. I feel like in this Q&A after the screening of the film, I feel like he teased that there was cut scenes that went into more detail about that, but that they would save it for the Blu-ray, which I thought was kind of odd. I don't know if you guys thought the same thing or.
Well, I know what you mean, and like, of course, when you film anything, you're going to have lots of extra material. But I mean, them explaining what the movie they're talking about was going to be should have been like a priority.
Yes. You would think.
The documentary starts out with John Shepp in front of these screens. And he's like, "These are the 3 scripts where Superman lives," and blah 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 blah. And you think because he's gonna like set the stage for you, and you think they're gonna keep cutting back to him explaining things. They don't.
No.
So I feel like they edited all this together and like, hey, we didn't really explain anything. Hey John, you go there in the corner and we'll shoot you for like 10 minutes and you can explain what this movie's all about. Because if you didn't have any, I mean, I guess if you're not a nerd, you're not going to watch this anyway.
Yeah.
But there are nerds who are not quite as nerdy as we are. I mean, look at us sitting here doing a podcast about this. So if you're not really familiar with the story or the history or anything, you're going to be pretty lost watching this documentary, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It was interesting seeing, a failed movie project and how that happens. There's a great documentary about Terry Gilliam's Don Quixote production. I don't know if you all have seen it. It's called Lost in La Mancha. But it's a great documentary because it was originally supposed to have Johnny Depp as Don Quixote. And this whole documentary basically captures a production gone awry. And that's kind of what I was expecting with The Death of Superman Lives. But at the same time, it didn't quite have a coherent enough telling of what happened. I mean, it had some great interviews.
Although it's
John
in
Peters.
the title.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what happened? Well,
I think that is the greatest flaw of this documentary, Krause. I 100% agree with you because you're expecting. Because I know what you're talking about. I haven't seen that documentary, but I have seen the Jaworski's Dune.
Oh, yeah, same thing.
My dad has it on Blu-ray, and sometimes these stories about the movies that don't get made are just as interesting as the movies that do get made. And the unique thing about Superman Lives is it got so far along. Like most movies you hear about, they get stalled in production hell, or as they call it. They don't get near as far as this movie did. I mean, they had almost a full cast. They had all these people working on it. I mean, they literally canceled it, like they said 3 weeks before?
Which just makes it even more disappointing that they don't really explain what happens. Like, you find out someone died, but you don't get the revelation of who killed them.
Basically what they were saying was, and John Shepp asked John Peters, what are the three main things that contributed to the death of Superman Lives? And he says, Tim Burton, Nicolas Cage. It's like throwing these people under the bus. You've hired them. And budget. And there was a very interesting little bit of the documentary where it shows you all of the Warner Brothers movies that were coming out in the mid-90s, what their budget was, and then how much they were actually making at the box office, and how they were just bombing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Like, it shows, like, of course, Batman and Robin, or Wild Wild West, or
the Postman.
Yeah, the Postman.
The Postman.
Some movies I never heard of. Some movies I completely forgotten about.
Yeah.
They were just losing so many millions of dollars. They could not justify taking the risk that would have been Superman Lives, because it was a risky project. John Peters said, that it would have been laughed off the screen, or it would have been an amazing success, and Warner Brothers just couldn't. They couldn't justify it. So that's a shame, because some of the best movies of all time have been crazy risks, like Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what if Fox had said, no, this is pretty crazy. We don't want to see that. I mean, I'm not saying this would have been Star Wars, but I mean, as a kid growing up in the 90s, like, we had some Batman movies and Jurassic Park, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as far as, like, big sci-fi movies, that's pretty much it, until Star Wars came back in 99.
Mm-hmm.
So,
it's true.
The Fifth Element's actually pretty good. I remember not liking it that much when it first came out, but I rewatched it recently, and
it holds up well.
I was surprised. I was surprised. But so, as we said, this is obviously a labor of love. John Shepp did a good job with it. I mean, he had to really scrounge together as much material as he could. I mean, I don't know where he got access to these things, or who he talked to, and so good on him though for sticking with these people, because this wasn't just like he just decided to do this a couple months ago. This has been years in the making. So I mean, they spent a lot of time, a lot of effort. So that's why I feel kind of bad criticizing it, but that is one thing I would say. I think this documentary would have been better served had he not been in it. He could have just been the narrator. But it's so weird. You see all these like interview 2 shots of him just sitting there talking to some guy, and it's like, if you've seen a documentary on like Ancient Aliens, okay, a horrible example, but a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to watch, okay, and especially play a drinking game sometime with Ancient Aliens. We've been talking about doing it for a while. It would be.
We have.
I'd probably pass out within the first 20 minutes, but
yep.
You
Extraterrestrials.
Ancient astronaut theorists believe.
Shot.
Yeah, that's the key word. But you have one guy, in a room. He's well lit. You know, he has like an interesting background behind him, and he's talking to the interviewer just over the camera. You know, so he's not looking directly in the camera. He's not looking at another person. He's just looking right past the camera as if he's talking to the viewer. You know, and that's how you see most documentaries. Anything on the History Channel, A&E,
30 for 30.
Yeah, ESPN, sure. Perfect. Yeah. So I think that approach would have suited the whole just the documentary as a whole. It would have been better suited for that. So because what you have is John Shepp sitting there with some guy just talking about something, and it's poorly lit half the time. And to be honest, and this is my main criticism because I work in the production world, and this just drives me crazy. They interviewed Tim Burton. Okay.
Yeah.
They flew to England. They got access to him in his home. Okay, and their setup is they got Tim Burton just kind of lounging in this office chair with wheels on it, and they got John Shepp across the room, so lots of negative space between the two of them. In a
two-shot.
Yeah, in a two-shot, and he's just lounging on this couch. It's poorly lit, and you see all the digital noise everywhere because it's so dark. You know, the camera can't read, you know, just complete black because I guess they were using some cheap cameras. I don't know.
And that really was a distraction when you compare that to the shots of John Peters.
You can see the stages of evolution of the documentary because obviously Tim Burton was one of the first people they went and interviewed, I guess. And that's why things look cheaper, I would assume.
John Shepp said in the Q&A that he couldn't get key interviews until he had someone big. Mm-hmm. So I feel like you're right. Tim Burton was the centerpiece of the puzzle.
And that's what makes it so disappointing that they didn't shoot it well.
Yeah,
like just you bring a light, you know, bring a light kit, bring an HD camera. I don't know, like it just
bring two cameras.
Yeah, well, they had two cameras. They kept cutting back and forth, and one of the cameras looked so much better, and it was the one shot of Tim Burton.
Oh, that's right.
But God forbid you don't see John Shepp sitting there on the couch listening to him talk. Like I feel terrible. Like, look, this was a labor of love. Okay, it was crowdfunded, but I just feel like just with a little bit more effort, it could have looked like it could have been broadcast on TV. When this looks like, okay, this is something I'd watch on YouTube that some fan made. And the audio quality, too. Oh, my gosh. Like, Tim Burton, it sounds like they just stuck a microphone, like, in his general direction. Like
he didn't check it.
Yeah, it's just so much ambient sound. I know I'm nitpicking it to death, but it's so simple to do. I just feel like anyone in the production world should know some basics of three-point lighting and miking the subject you're interviewing. So... And that's what I'm saying.
Well, especially if you have crowdfunding and you have the funds to do it,
and you have access to Tim Burton in his home.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
So be that as it may, I do feel like the content overcame the production.
Oh, absolutely.
Woes, because
absolutely.
You're sitting there talking stuff you had never heard of before. Like they're talking about who was going to be Brainiac in the movie, and it's going to be Christopher Walken as Brainiac, which I think is an interesting choice. But so is all of Tim Burton's casting decisions. Christopher Walken as Brainiac? What do you guys think about that?
I don't know. That's again, like you can never know because you haven't seen it. You don't know what like he would have done with the character. You know, I guess as I get older, like instead of because like I'm not like as like you know hardcore against you know certain castings. I'm just kind of waiting to see because you can never know and you could always be surprised like we were with you know when we found out like Ledger was going to be Joker
or Anne Hathaway as Catwoman.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping for that, but
anyway. You should also note that he wasn't just going to be Brainiac; that he was also going to be Jor-El.
Yes, an interesting choice to have him take the form of his creator, I guess.
Which I think he would have been a great Jor-El.
And that's also a good idea because that's something that like you know the animated series used to a certain extent, like having you know Brainiac be like a Kryptonian. You know, entity.
Just like Smallville.
Yeah.
And then another thing about Christopher Walken was they were going to combine Lex Luthor and Brainiac into Lexiac at some point, which actually does have a basis in the comic books. I mean, it sounds absurd.
And in Justice League. Yeah, look at the end of Justice League Unlimited.
Yeah, Justice League Unlimited, they merge into one super being. So there is a precedent for that. Lex Luthor was going to be played by Kevin Spacey, who was everyone's choice for Lex Luthor. Then
he was a great choice.
Well, and then we actually saw him as Lex Luthor in Superman Returns, and we're like,
and it was garbage.
And that wasn't his fault. That was Bryan Singer's fault.
Yeah, because I've said this many times. Like he is more Lex Luthor on House of Cards than he was in Superman Returns.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Lex Luthor and Brainiac play no role in the death of Superman.
That's correct.
No.
Story because in the comic books at this stage, Lex Luthor had faked his own death. because his kryptonite ring had poisoned him, and so he cloned himself, and now he's put his brain in another body. Gosh, comics are stupid. But, so he had come back to Metropolis masquerading.
Still better than Bat Chappie.
Oh yes, thank you. So he had come back to Metropolis masquerading as his son, Lex Luthor II, and he was like Australian. He had like long red. He looked a lot like Lionel Luthor, actually.
He did.
He had long flowing hair and a beard and stuff like that. And he was undercover. And I guess at some point he got his body back, or I don't know. But he turned into the old bald Lex Luthor again at some point. So you have to change that. Also, Supergirl played a huge role in this. She's not mentioned in this movie at all.
The clone.
Which is it? Well, that's its own thing. A clone Supergirl from like another dimension.
Yeah.
Comics are stupid. Although
that was why I was so excited as a kid hearing about this movie. Is I pictured Superman fighting Doomsday, which was, to me the coolest thing that could possibly happen. And I think that was the interesting thing about Superman Lives, is that it was so far out there that, you were either going to absolutely hate it, or it was going to be so fresh and so cool that, you would love it.
But in the 90s technology, I don't think was there yet. Special effects technology. I mean, think about what was coming out in the 90s, like
Phantom Menace.
Yep.
And that was 99. This was supposed to come out this was supposed to come out summer 98. Mm-hmm. And look at Godzilla. Okay, I mean, look at that. Look at the special effects in that. I think it would have been amazing to see Superman fight Doomsday, and I'm still waiting on that. You ever see the small episode where he fought Doomsday, Krause?
That's not the same. That's not the same.
You mean that small episode where that guy in that Doomsday costume punched Clark like 3 times, and that was it?
Yeah.
Such disappointment. And it's not that hard to do. He doesn't need to be a giant CGI monster. I mean, you could just have a really like well constructed animatronic suit. Like you just get a really big, like the guy that plays the Mountain on Game of Thrones.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, put that guy in some kind of animatronic costume, and that's Doomsday. They didn't really explain how they were going to bring Doomsday to life. Maybe they didn't get that far. I mean, they spent a lot of time on Brainiac, and Brainiac was going to be like this spider creature with a head, which is interesting and has a basis in the. I mean, he actually, you know what that made me think of? In the Return of the Jedi, where they go into Jabba's palace and there's like this little spider thing walking around. That's what that reminded me of. That or
more spiders.
Or more spiders from John Peters. That or the baby with the missing eye from Toy Story.
Oh man, that was creepy as hell.
That was creepy.
That is what their Brainiac designs reminded me of. So I'm still waiting on a live action Brainiac on the screen. Yeah. I mean, once again, Smallville tried its best. Smallville did a pretty good job with Brainiac, though. I think of all the Superman villains that adapted, I think they did the best job with Brainiac.
Yeah.
They basically made him the T-1000, but still on a TV budget. But
I will say I am looking forward to seeing what's on the Blu-ray, because it did sound like there was a lot
There's a lot more stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and they're going to go into Superman Flyby, which is J.J. Abrams' Superman. Because that was after this, but before Superman Returns, there was Superman Flyby, and that's before J.J. Abrams was who he was today. He was just that guy from Alias. And which I've never seen Alias, by the way. Have you guys seen Alias?
I have. It's a great show.
It's a good show.
Yeah,
it's got
I watched Alias.
Electra in it.
And the Mantis.
Really?
The Mantis. Yep. Oh yeah, I totally forgot about the Mantis.
My man Carl Lumley.
Wow.
My dad's college friend.
The past.
Small world.
No shit.
Speaking of Mantis, you guys ever watch Nightman?
I did watch Nightman.
You know what I'm talking about, Krause?
No, I don't.
Jazz musician by day.
That sounds awesome.
By night.
That doesn't make any sense, though, because jazz musicians play at night.
Yeah, they play at night.
I saw that at the last Comic-Con I was on. I saw like the complete series of Nightman, like on Blu-ray bootleg DVD.
Yeah.
Did he look kind of like a square Batman?
He looked like the Orkin Man.
He did,
but in purple.
Oh, okay.
It was like, I don't know, it was probably on like WB or something, Saturday nights or something.
I think it was either that or UPN. I can't remember.
Yeah,
which.
one of those two.
There's like Mutant X came on after it, which was like this X-Men knockoff
with John Shea,
right.
with Wilson Clark's John Shea.
But now I've got a hankering to find old Mantis episodes.
So seeing the documentary, guys, would you have preferred we got this to, say, Superman Returns or Man of Steel? What do you guys think?
That's a tough question. They all have their merits. I mean, I love that Superman Returns nodded to Donner, but they relied on it too heavily. Yeah. Man of Steel, certainly they took it in a great direction as far as relying more on the comics and being heavy on the sci-fi. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what this would have been. But like you said, they didn't have the budget, so it's a tough call. I don't know how y'all feel about it.
I'm going to go ahead and say that I would have liked to see this. Because you never know. You never know what could have happened. It could have been great. It could be something that we're talking about now as like, what the hell? Who knows? But it still would be nice to see. I'm intrigued by this idea after seeing the documentary. I'm intrigued to see what this could have been.
Yeah.
Hell, I think they're still intrigued about what could have been.
Right. I mean, Kevin Smith even says in the documentary, he said, "Hell yeah, I'll give you all my money. I want to see a Nick Cage Superman movie." Because this was at a time when it was 20 years between Superman movies, okay? And this just could have filled that gap.
Yeah.
Like, if it was terrible, it would have just gone the way of Batman and Robin, and we'd have a lot of fun, riffing on it the rest of our lives.
I think that's part of the reason why Superman Returns didn't work, is that it just was so long between seeing Superman on the silver screen.
Well, there were so many, and that's a podcast for another day. There's so many reasons Superman Returns didn't work.
True.
I love the idea of continuing the Donnerverse, if you will, from the Christopher Reeve movies, but it was just poorly executed because, like Brian Singer, he kept saying it's a vague history. So so it felt like a sequel and a reboot, and it just didn't.
It didn't commit to either.
Yeah, and it's like so.
Brian was in a haze from his last party when he was doing that movie.
That's true. No, the rumors of Brian Singer's set activity put Josh Trank to shame.
Yeah.
But so much. Just Superman Returns could have been so good, but I will say of all the Superman movies, the plane scene in Superman Returns is probably my favorite Superman scene in anything. The plane.
Yes.
And that's very exciting.
This kind of ties into my thoughts on a certain trailer that was released today. But
segue. Should we segue now?
Let's do it.
What do y'all think of that trailer for Supergirl?
I'm gonna let Lance go first.
No, I'm not gonna go first because y'all go first.
All right, Krause, you're our guest of honor.
I thought it was, for the most part, it looked to me like The Devil Wears Kryptonian Prada, which I was not.
That's what everybody is automatically jumping to on the internet.
Well, I'm not entirely excited about it, but I loved the fact that it shows an origin story similar to that of the comics, where there's a plane crashing, and what are you going to do? You gonna let someone die, or in this case, you gonna let your sister die?
Maybe.
To me that was the coolest part of the trailer, and that's why I'm holding out a little bit of hope that they might have something cool with it. But overall, I'm a little concerned about it.
Well, I thought I didn't know what I watched after I watched that. I was like, what is this? Like, I mean, I've watched a lot of Superman TV. I watched all 10 Years of Smallville. I watched The Flash. I watch Arrow. I don't watch Gotham, though. Gotham is garbage. Don't watch Gotham. But it's funny, this is going to be in the same time slot as Gotham.
Yes, it is.
It's going to be, so that should wipe out the rest of their audience, I would think. So good on you, CBS. Attack them where it hurts. Look, it's Superman, so I'm going to watch it. But it's just hard to put my finger on it. Like you're right, Krause. It really feels like literally Ally McBeal is in this. Ally McBeal is her boss. So it really feels like a David E. Kelly show. Who ironically had a Wonder Woman pilot for NBC a couple years ago that did not sell. I'm glad Superman exists in this world. I was afraid that they were just going to ignore him like they did on Birds of Prey with Batman, which would have been a terrible idea.
Or just barely acknowledge him like in the movie with Helen Slater.
Now, he's off doing something on another planet. What? But here's his poster.
Here's his poster. Oh, man.
So, this is from the same creative team that brought us Arrow and The Flash. So, I'm going into it with an open mind. I'm glad that they have her in a world where Superman is established and all that. It's odd that like Jimmy Olsen, he's like a cool black guy now.
Like, he looks. First of all, okay. Well,
the guy. I'll say this: the guy playing Toy Man, and that's the guy designed for costume, by the way. Winslow Schott. I don't think they say it in the trailer, but that's who he is. He's the guy from Last 5 Years, the movie.
Yep.
That guy looks like Jimmy Olsen.
Yes,
that guy should have been Jimmy Olsen. He acts like Jimmy Olsen. I don't know why he's not Jimmy Olsen in the show.
Yeah, the guy playing Jimmy Olsen, brother Jim Olsen, he looks like Luke Cage.
Oh, he does.
Like, this guy should be playing Luke Cage instead of this other brother that's playing him. But that's another discussion for something else.
You know what? You're right. The plane rescue is good. That is the classic Superman revealing himself to the world situation. So that's cool. I'm gonna go into it with an open mind, but I'm not crazy about it, to be honest. I'm just it just feels really too Ally McBeal-ish, David E. Kelly-ish, And it doesn't help, like I said, that Ally McBeal is literally her boss in this show. So anyway, Lance, what did you think?
I liked it. And I liked it because like the parts of it that I have confidence in are Supergirl. I have confidence in Melissa. I have confidence in her being Kara. And that's the most that I took from the trailer is I think that she has the character down pretty well. And I think that she'll do a good job with the character. The parts that I am concerned about, like, because I do have concerns, I'm concerned about everybody else. Like, I am concerned that Ally McBeal is in the show because she's too Ally McBeal. Like, Callista Flockhart is too much of one note. And then, brother Jim Olsen, it's not that I'm like down on having a brother as Jim Olsen, but like the dude is like, I mean, he looks like Luke Cage. Like, he's not supposed to be that imposing. So that's kind of weird. The Winslow Schott character is kind of weird. That DEO, I think, or whatever agency she's going to be working with. Like, I had a feeling something like that would be a part of it.
How cliche is that, right?
Exactly. So that part is, those are the parts that I'm going to have to be kind of wary of, I guess. But as far as like the characterization of Kara is concerned, which is what the show should be about, like overall, like and above all else, I think if they get that correct, I think the show will be fine. I think I like that Superman is a part of the universe and that he exists, but he can't. But I think to do correct justice to the character, like the show can't be about him. It has to be about Kara. So like I'm not gonna like expect to see him anytime soon. I'm not going to expect to see him frequently because I want to see a Kara story and not a Superman story. As much as I like Superman, but that's not what this show is about. So I'm kind of looking at it with that lens.
Well, she's not in Metropolis.
No.
I forgot the name of the city that she's in.
Let me ask you guys this. If this fails, if this like embarrassingly falls flat on its face, does this hurt DC's rebooting of the DC universe on film?
Yes.
Does this hurt Superman?
No.
I think it does.
No, they're keeping him separate for a reason. That's probably one of them.
Well, they're keeping it separate, but at the same time, you have Supergirl. People are automatically going to think of her cousin. I mean, like
exactly.
The real question to me is Supergirl going to connect to the Arrowverse?
Yeah,
and it's the same creative people, so all indications say yes. And the implications of that are Superman exists in that universe. That's a pretty big revelation.
Yeah, it is.
So they probably don't want to go that route.
Yeah, I know, because if they connect it to that universe, then that's the ultimate game changer.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's when I have the most invest. Like I've been kind of down on Arrow this season, as Lance will attest. Mm-hmm. But the Flash has been so good, and I used to like Arrow so much. Like, that's keeping me invested in Arrow. Like, I'm going to keep watching Arrow. Of course I am. So, because it's all part of the same world. Now, if they make Supergirl part of the same world, and it's kind of mediocre, but I'm like, I'm still invested. If, Oliver Queen or Barry Allen or somebody shows up on Supergirl and connects the universes, I'll be pretty excited, and they'll keep me watching, But if it's like Gotham and like a completely independent show, and it starts to not be good at all, then no, I won't watch it anymore. Even though it's, I can't, like, there's only so much time in the day, I'm an adult now. Okay, I got podcasts to do. I can't be watching.
That's right.
I can't be watching TV shows I don't like just to complain about them anymore. So, I don't know. I hope that they don't. You see, weird. Do you want to see them cast a Superman to show up on this show?
No.
So what do you want to do? Like some guy with the sun behind his head, like in the trailer?
If Superman shows up, I mean, like, honestly, the only thing that's going to make it good is if it's Cavill.
Yeah.
So ratings are starting to slip. Coming in season finale next year, they bring in Superman.
It'll never happen. It'll never happen. It'd be great if it did, but DC's history with keeping their film and TV separate.
And if it did, then that means then that means that Barry Allen, as we know him as Grant Gustin, no longer what are they going to do with Ezra Miller if that's happening?
Well, it's not going to be Henry Cavill. This is what I don't get about
Tom Welling.
Yeah, exactly, Tom Welling. Screw with people's heads.
Man,
I'm for that.
The internet would explode.
Had they not, the Tom Welling already has an established Supergirl and Superman universe, so that would kind of confuse people. But who cares? Who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
Just do it. I want Tom Welling to show up on The Flash. But if the movies and the TV shows are separate, why does it matter if Batman and Superman appear on Arrow or The Flash? Right? It's a different universe.
Well,
so
those studio executives at Warner Brothers,
John Peters of the world.
John Peters of the world.
Man, I gotta get that Spider-Man.
They think you see a Superman suit on television. It's yawn.
Yeah.
I dug it. I'm looking forward to it.
As a lifelong Superman fan, this is not. I'm not the target audience of this. I understand, but
I'll still watch the premiere.
Yeah. Oh, I'll give it. I think my rule now has been I'll give it half a season because I gave Gotham half a season and stopped watching.
That was a half a season too long.
And I it was.
I continued for a few more weeks, but God.
Did you watch? Oh, the Joker episode was your last episode, right?
It was before the Joker.
Oh, before you didn't see the Joker?
I did not.
That's right, kids.
I saw the trailer for it, and I was like, no.
This kid is no joke.
Yeah, it was that, basically. It was the equivalent of the DC comic thing with Grayson. It's like, you think you know Nightwing, but you don't know Dick. It was that moment.
I also gave Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. half a season and stopped watching. So I'll give it half a season, And like I said, if it connects to Arrow and The Flash, I'm in for the long haul. So that's how they'll get me. One thing we didn't mention was her adoptive sister, whose name is Alex.
Yep.
So she's going to be her arch nemesis, right? That's how it's going to be, right? I'm
probably.
Is she going to lose all her hair too? It's it's one thing to do that when you do a gender swap. If they did a Supergirl show where Superman never existed, right? And he was never going to exist, and this was your female equivalent, for her to have and I know I'm just making assumptions here, but that's how it's going to happen. She's going to be her arch nemesis at some point. If she's jealous for her powers or whatever. That's fine to call her Alex, but in a world where there's a Superman and presumably a Lex Luthor, you can't have a Supergirl who is like, oh, Alex, I don't not like where that's going. And there's going to be some stupid love triangle between somebody.
Between, Toy Man, Brother Jim and Supergirl.
Jim. That's gonna be so many memes.
It is. And there's gonna be worse ones than Brother Jim. Let me. Let's just put that out there.
Yeah, can't wait for those. Oh.
Yeah, no joke.
I'm going into it with an open mind.
Sort of.
But come on, can you blame me? Did you see this? You saw the same trailer we did.
Yeah, I know, and I liked it. But it's I don't know.
If it's not The Flash, I don't like it.
Pretty much at this point.
As far as DC's concerned. Hey, I'm at least excided about Batman vs. Superman.
That's true.
What about you, Krause? You didn't like Man of Steel.
I'm just jaded all around now with DC.
You can't even read the comics anymore.
I can't even read the comics anymore. Yeah, I'm just going to take it one release at a time.
Maybe we're just getting too old for this shit.
Maybe that, yeah, I think that every day. Every day I see a trailer. I think that.
All right, guys. Well, it's been fun talking about Superman Lives and Supergirl. One thing we'll never see, and one we will see. That's when Supergirl comes out, Krause, we'll have to. You're one of our main Superman guys. So,
it's true. We also need to talk about. We need to talk Smallville.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we do need.
Yeah, Supergirl sucks. I'll start just watching Smallville again. All right, Krause. Well, how can people find you on social media if they choose to do so?
I am on Twitter as Papakin, Papakin.
Lance, what about you?
You can find me on Twitter at Sir Lance Laster.
And if you want to find me, I'm at Guardian of Forever. That's the number 4 ever. And if you want to find us at Nerds Explain It All, we are at Nerds Explain. on Twitter.
It looks weird, but trust it. It's the correct
Just
one.
read it left to right. It's the correct one. Just read it left to right all at once, and it'll be fine.
And let me just say that you guys make a great podcast to listen to on my way to work.
Listen to this guy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brown knows his way back to another guest appearance. Well done.
No, I have to drive from Katy, Texas, all the way to Galleria Center of Houston, and it takes about an hour every morning. And when I have time to listen to your latest podcast, it definitely makes the drive shorter. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Krause. Appreciate that, man.
Yeah. All right, so I guess this wraps it up for this edition of Nerds Explain It All. I'm Lance.
I'm Zach.
Mike.
We might not break the news, although we kind of did today with the Supergirl things. That was cool.
Yeah.
But we do break it down. See you next time.